It's my nerd world. Welcome to it, a Star Wars show, and on this week's episode, I'll finally get to the Obi Wan Kenobi finale and my thoughts of the series overall. More Taika Waititi news to share with you about his upcoming Star Wars film, and maybe a little bit better understanding about when we are not going to be getting that movie. Plus, we'll talk about Reva's original ending in Obi Wan Kenobi Chapter 6. We have your listener feedback to get into, and then I also encourage you to hang out towards the end of the show. I'll give a bit of an update on my surgery and some events that have taken place in my life over the course of the past few weeks. Thank you so much for checking out a Star Wars show here on My Nerd World this week.
It's an instinct. A feeling. The Force brought us together. We're not alone. Good people will fight if we lead them.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
But I do.
Long have I waited. And now, you're coming together. Is your undoing.
Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi. Your destiny. The Force will be with you.
Always.
My Nerd World.
I'm your host, Jon Justice, here on My Nerd World, a Star Wars show, and I thank you so much for taking time out of your day to check out this week's episode. Took a week off. I think it was only a week. It feels like a lot longer than a week, but took a week off. But I'm back to finally give my thoughts on the Obi Wan Kenobi finale and the series overall. And as I mentioned in the intro of the show, at the end of the show, I'll get into a few things more extensively for those that are interested. But if you follow My Nerd World, a Star Wars show, you know that I was going to be taking some time off to have to undergo my third open heart surgery. The surgery was successful. They patched the hole that was leaking in my aortic graft from a surgery that took place in 2009. Recovery was awful, not going to lie. And in the middle of recovery, I ended up suffering in completely unexpected and tragic loss in my life. And again, I will share that with you at the end of the show for those that are interested in that. The good news is that I'm on the mend. This is kind of my warm-up to getting back on the air with my full-time job on Twin Cities News Talk here in Minneapolis. This is the first time that I've been behind the mic now since Monday of last week. The surgery was on Tuesday of last week. And I had intended to actually get down into my office and studio a little bit earlier this weekend, but just wasn't quite feeling I was there yet, and decided today would be the day that I would sit down behind the mic and see how things play out. So bear with me as I run through some of the news of the day and give you my thoughts on the Obi Wan Kenobi series. You may be listening thinking you sound fine. Well, I do. It's an energy level thing. When I'm sitting in one spot for a long enough period of time, I feel okay. I've just been completely torn apart. When I get up and move around, that's when I have the most difficulty and energy-wise as well. So again, I hope you enjoy this week's show. And just a little footnote on it that I'm not a week out from my I'm not a little less than 2 weeks out from my first open heart surgery. So or a week out. I don't know. I'm not paying attention. No, 2 weeks out. Whatever. All right, let's get into the news this week. First off, we'll start with The Wrap. The Wrap has an article talking about Taika Waititi's Star Wars film, which we've been mentioning a lot on the show. I still had anticipated that we would get this movie at the end of next year. I think that's less and less likely at this point in time. Of course, Taika Waititi is out right now promoting Thor: Love and Thunder, which gets released later on this week. According to The Wrap, the article goes as follows, at least the relevant points for you. Some had suggested that filming on Waititi's movie would begin later this year, since Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy had suggested this movie was further along than Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron, which Disney had penciled in for December of 2023. If Disney is still trying to fill a slot next Christmas with a Star Wars project, it would presumably fall to Waititi's still unnamed project. As it turns out, though, according to The Wrap, not so much. Not this year, Waititi said, when he was asked if he would begin working on the new project soon. He explained, "I'm going to be in New Zealand from August until the end of the year with Our Flag Means Death and Time Bandits," which I'm really curious about. I'm a huge fan of the Terry Gilliam original 80s Time Bandits. Interesting. And I think Taika Waititi is probably one of the best choices right now of modern-day filmmakers to tackle any kind of sequel or remake. He went on to say that during that time of those two projects, he will still be writing. I'm still trying to figure out what the story is. The article goes on and says if Waititi's movie isn't going to be ready in time for next Christmas, and Jenkins' movie is being pushed off to the side for the moment, in Kennedy's words, then what will the next Star Wars movie even be? And when will it be? Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige is working on a Star Wars project, and director J.D. Dillard, whose World War II movie Devotion opens later this year, has been rumored to be working on a project, but those seem even further off than Jenkins and Waititi's movies. I want to toss something in here, and I've got no evidence of this whatsoever, just a bit of commentary on your host's part. I would not be surprised to see if Rogue Squadron was, for lack of a better word, resurrected in the wake of the success of Top Gun Maverick. That's what that movie, I mean, so many people have pointed out that there's a lot of parallels to Top Gun Maverick and the original Star Wars A New Hope, because there are, and it's great because of that. I absolutely love Top Gun Maverick, but seeing that movie had so much success, and we don't know what the story of Star Wars Rogue Squadron is, but one can assume that it was akin to fighter pilots like Top Gun. I mean, that was the whole Patty Jenkins spin when they did the promotional video of that a couple of years ago with her on the roller skates, getting a helmet out of the trunk of her car and skating over to an X-Wing sitting there on the tarmac. So I wouldn't be surprised in the wake of Top Gun Maverick's success that in sort of an odd turn of fate, in an odd twist where usually you would have movies and other studios following the lead of Star Wars ends up following the lead of other movies and studios and takes advantage of the popularity of what is going to be the biggest film this year. So I'm just going to throw that out there. I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up getting some news very soon to point to Rogue Squadron now being pushed to the forefront of development. Now, that being said, I don't see either of those movies coming out by the end of next year. Certainly not Waititi's. And based off of my biggest complaints over Obi Wan Kenobi, I hope that is the case, because I want these movies to look good. I watched the Last Jedi this week and was reminded once again. I've been watching a lot of movies, actually, but I was reminded, once again of, just how much I missed the cinematic experience and how much Obi Wan Kenobi did not look like a movie. It looked like a weird TV show, and I'll get into that coming up. Now, that being said, the lack of any Star Wars film in the theaters is just going to generate more hype for when we ever do get a Star Wars film in theater again, in the theaters again. But we've also got a lot of Star Wars content coming out. So this year we've got Bad Batch Season 2 and Andor on the way, and I think Andor is really going to deliver in the way that Obi-Wan Kenobi didn't. I think Andor is going to. They've been, as I've mentioned many times on the show, they've been shooting that series forever, and the visuals from what we saw just in the teaser alone looks like it's much more grand in scope. And then next year is stacked. We've got Mandalorian Season 3. We have the Jedi Survivor video game, the follow-up to Jedi Fallen Order. Skeleton Crew, which looks to be interesting, sort of the Emblem-esque young adult Star Wars themed show. Young Jedi Adventures, which is a cartoon. We've got Ahsoka and even possibly The Acolyte. So we've got more than enough Star Wars content to satiate us fans. Not enough to satiate us fans who are desperate to see Star Wars back on the silver screen, but I'm also fully willing to admit that they can take their time, because my biggest complaint over Obi Wan Kenobi was the quality of the show in and of itself. So, and interesting too, well, you may or may not have been thinking this, but I told this to my wife. We went to go get dinner on Friday and can't drive for another 3 weeks or whatever, but I went to go with her to go get pizza for Friday night, and I realized something as we were discussing movies to watch, and that is I hadn't watched any Star Wars, which that was Friday, so I've been home since Monday, and I hadn't watched any Star Wars all week long, and I realized sort of subconsciously the reason why I hadn't watched any Star Wars. The reason why I hadn't watched any Star Wars is because when big events happen in my life, I think a lot of people are like this, but when big events happen in my life, music specifically, but sometimes movies too, they get attached to those life moments. And it was a rough it's been a rough almost 2 weeks, to say the least. I thought this past year had been the most difficult in my life, and these 2 weeks just took the cake. And I think subconsciously I didn't want to attach any of that which I really, really love to the hurt and tragic feelings of loss that I had to endure this week. But as we got to the weekend, I was feeling a little better about everything, and decided to do The Last Jedi, and planning on doing The Rise of Skywalker here very soon. All right, and again, I'll get into more of that at the end of the show for those that are interested in a more detailed description. Let's get back to more Star Wars, though. Before I give you my thoughts on Obi Wan Kenobi, I want to share with you from the Direct. They had an exclusive interview with Nathan Johnson from the Direct. Obi Wan Kenobi writer Stuart Beattie discussed the original plans for Reva's character, her arc in the draft for the Obi Wan Kenobi film. So, when asked if Riva was in the early drafts of the movie script, apparently it was supposed to be a trilogy, and I think I have some of the details on that coming up. But when asked if Riva was in the early drafts of the movie script, Beattie said, "She was my creation. I created Riva all the way through." He continued discussing Riva's view on the Jedi as villains and how the character originally had no knowledge of Anakin being Darth Vader. He said, "Yeah, except the only difference is in mine, she didn't know Vader was Anakin, because I was like, how'd she know that? All she saw was Anakin as Anakin because he hadn't changed in the suit yet, right? So Anakin killed her friends, put the scar on her, almost killed her, left her for dead, basically. So in her mind, the Jedi Council were the biggest villains in the galaxy. She believed the lies that they were plotting a coup to overtake and get power and all that, but they were stopped by the clones. So she believed that's why she's hunting Jedi, because she believed the Jedi are the worst, basically." Now, Beattie went on to talk about Reva's original fate, and with the story ending with her dying in the hands of Vader in order to save Obi-Wan. This confirms an original Making Star Wars plot leak, by the way, where she went to Vader saying Kenobi is dead and got killed by him. Now, he went on to say, "Because I figured, how'd she know that this thing is a mechanical suit that everyone calls Darth Vader is the guy who killed her or tried to kill her? So it was Obi-Wan kind of letting her in on the secret, and that revelation that makes her kind of go, oh my gosh, I've been wrong this whole time." And so she goes and basically saved Obi-Wan by sacrificing herself, telling Vader, "I killed Kenobi." And then Vader killed her, with her knowing that Vader would kill her. So that kind of completed her arc. So just a little bit different, that she was, absolutely the Inquisitor hunting Kenobi all the way through and driven by her own personal demons. You get further into the piece, and Beattie also mentioned that while he thought the third sister had a vital role to play in the story, he felt she had to die. Yeah, killed by Vader at the end of it. Yeah, I wanted this story. I wanted her story to end. I wanted Riva to play her part in the Kenobi Vader story, which was essentially at the end. She was the one that allowed Vader, basically told Vader to stop hunting Kenobi. You know, she ended the obsession Vader had with Kenobi. She claimed it was over, it's done. So that was her role to play. And she'd done so many terrible things, I felt she had to die. Laughter. You can only redeem so much. The writer also confirmed that the original plans for Obi Wan Kenobi didn't include other Inquisitors, just Riva. So no other plans to include any other Inquisitors. I knew I wanted Darth Vader, obviously, as the big overall villain in the story, and I see him as an antagonist who was going to be more one-on-one with Obi-Wan throughout the show, so Riva was just the result of that. I knew I needed that character. Beatty continued by describing how exploring the fallout of Order 66 helped to inform Riva's character and take her to a place of understanding. And of course, there are so many great characters from the Purge, the Great Purge of the Temple and everything. And it was just like, okay, let's see what she was doing at the Purge. What if she saw everything that went down? What if Anakin/Vader killed her, left her for dead, sent her on this path? So all of that kind of stuff just kind of made sense and allowed me to create a very confused, conflicted, blinded character filled with hate and rage and all the stuff that makes people want to be Sith and Sith acolytes. And take her place of understanding truth, understanding who Obi-Wan is, who Vader really is, and what her path in the galaxy is. The Obi Wan Kenobi writer also touched on the struggle of bringing stakes to a prequel project involving Darth Vader and Obi-Wan, and how Reva could allow for McGregor's character to have someone to defeat or someone to save. We were always faced with the fact that Obi-Wan could never kill Darth Vader, so he needed to defeat someone. And so Riva was my attempt to give him someone to defeat or someone to save, because he's not going to save Darth Vader. The Darth Vader storyline is going to end in a downer, so I wanted to save someone, and that's why I created Riva. When asked about Riva's potential connection to Trilia Sunduri, Beatty revealed that the third sister was created before the video game was even released. So I hadn't played Jedi Fallen Order. I wrote this initially in 2017, so that was just before I played Fallen Order. I then played Fallen Order and was like, oh, wow, this is Riva. No, look, it's just a coincidence. I wanted to create a new character because I didn't want to be bound to any canon with any of the others that had already been discussed, and I wanted the freedom to take her where I wanted to take her. So that's why I created her, for this story. And that's why the other thing, too, we're already using so many characters to establish canon with Obi, Darth, Owen, and Beru. So I was looking to create someone new. I even had Cody in mind, so I was looking for someone to create someone new. And this is interesting to me because without knowing the process of how the series ended up being formed, of what we ended up seeing on screen versus this being sort of the movie, the movie version. It does make at least some sense in just looking at the details of this article and the film version of why we didn't see specific things like the Inquisitors do more than what they did in the show. Riva obviously did, but the other brother and the other sister obviously never really had any sort of major action sequences, just some altercations. The Grand Inquisitor, who I loved, and I would have loved to have seen the Grand Inquisitor from beginning to end in this whole thing. I would have almost preferred to see the Grand Inquisitor in almost a Riva role. I don't know how you do that and keep him alive, but it kind of bums me out that he bows out in the second episode and doesn't come back until the second to last episode. I really, really thought that portrayal of the Inquisitor was good, and I wanted to see more of that type of action. Be that as it may, I do treat these as historical documents, and that's not what we got. But it is interesting to know that Riva had been there from the start, and a little bit of how that whole character ended up morphing into what we ended up seeing on screen. And spoiler alert again, ultimately her redemption, right? TalkShowNerd at gmail.com. As always, if you want to comment, I'd love to hear from you. Let's get to this week's topic, and that is my thoughts on Obi Wan Kenobi season finale and the series as a whole.
This is not going to go the way you think.
I'm going to keep this kind of simple. As you probably listen to my dog whining outside of my door upstairs because the entire house has abandoned my poor little girl, and I can't have her in here because she'll be whining on the mic while I'm trying to do the show. I'm going to keep this kind of simple and just kind of give you my straightforward thoughts on this, mostly because the episode's been out there for a while now, a couple of weeks, and I'm sure you've listened to a lot of commentary over this already. First off, let me tell you my first experience watching Obi Wan Kenobi. So I went in for my open heart surgery on Tuesday the 21st at 7:30 in the morning. And when I woke up, I was really confused because the nurses and doctors in charge of me, I could hear, I wasn't really talking to anybody. I was really out of it for the first few days. And I could hear them talking around me, but wasn't really paying attention to what they were saying, apart from at one point they started giving out the time. They started saying, oh, it's 10:30, by 11 o'clock we need to blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I asked one of the nurses, what time of day is it? They go, it's morning. I'm like, it's morning? This doesn't make any sense to me at all. There's no way the surgery was that short. And then I asked them, what day is it? And they go, oh, it's Wednesday morning. And I was like, oh, I've been out an entire day. That's interesting. So I was in the ICU, let's see, through Wednesday night, Thursday morning. It might have been, Thursday morning, early Thursday morning. They took me out of ICU and they sent me up to my room on the 6th floor at the University of Minnesota Medical Center. And once I got into my own room, still was feeling atrocious, but I was a little bit more up and about than I was before. I had less things plugged into me. And I hadn't watched anything in those first 24 hours. I was such a zombie from the medication, the pain medication, and just the whole procedure that I just had no interest in anything. I had my phone off almost the whole time. When I finally decided that I was up for, putting something on and watching something, it was then on Thursday, probably Thursday afternoon, that it dawned on me that I completely forgotten the Obi Wan Kenobi finale was out. And so I sat there in my hospital bed, hopped up on numerous amounts of pain medication, and watched the finale, which was an interesting way to watch this show. Probably a good thing. I enjoyed it when I watched it the first time. I'm not going to lie, I had a little bit of difficulty sort of taking it all in just because of everything that was going on around me. That being said, I enjoyed it as an episode more so than I probably enjoyed the other episodes. It might be one of my favorite ones for a number of different reasons. I love the spaceship that Obi Wan Kenobi ends up using. I like the fact that we got kind of a quasi space battle with the Star Destroyer chasing the Partisans shuttle, and then Obi-Wan Kenobi taking off in that singular ship that we never had seen before. The ship looks an awful lot in design as to how I describe my T-craft spacecraft in my Embark science fiction series. Enjoyed the Vader fight at the end of it and the wrap-up of it as well. Overall, again, if I'm going to go and watch any Obi-Wan Kenobi episode over again, it's probably hands down going to be the season finale because it has the most things in it that I enjoyed. So for the Obi-Wan Kenobi show as a whole, let me share with you, for me, what the good is. And this is all subjective. I want to make sure I say that up front. This is all subjective. I know some people could absolutely hate it. Some people could absolutely love it. This is just my opinion and view over the entertainment that we call Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi from the Disney Plus show. I thought the story was good. Was it a story that needed to be told? I'm not so sure, although I did start watching A New Hope over the course of the past few nights, and it did add context and did not ruin the Princess Leia message to Obi-Wan Kenobi in the film. Everything that was revealed in Obi Wan Kenobi, I specifically watched that scene just last night. And, Obi Wan Kenobi, you served my father in the Clone Wars, and now he begs you in to struggle against the Empire. And then the whole conversation that ensues after that with Obi Wan Kenobi encouraging Luke to go along with him. I really do think that the story that Obi Wan Kenobi told elevates all of that, in my opinion. And I did not expect that was going to be the case. There seems to be more at stake now. A better understanding of Obi Wan Kenobi asking Luke, now is the time for him to go on this adventure, and it's time for a new hope after meeting him in the Obi Wan Kenobi show. So I think overall, having watched the majority of A New Hope, at least the scenes that are relevant to Obi Wan Kenobi, the story was really, really good. The action was good. I don't like the choreography and the framing of shots. We'll get into more of that in a moment. But the action that was there was good. Sans that chase scene in the first episode when they're tracking down Princess Leia, the Vader Obi-Wan fight I thought was great. There was something sorely missing in it that I'll share with you in a moment, but I thought that was really good. I thought it was choreographed well. I thought that it gave us a different view, a different style of fight than we had seen before in Star Wars, especially between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Vader. I felt it was a very good sort of mix and in between from what we saw in Revenge of the Sith to what we're going to end up seeing, we will end up seeing in A New Hope. Ewan McGregor just playing Obi-Wan Kenobi saves the whole show for me. I will watch this series over again, specifically because it's Obi-Wan Kenobi played by Ewan McGregor. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Leia, I thought was a lot of fun. Visually consistent. Now, I'll talk about this in a moment because I've got a lot of problems with the visuals on this. However, the show in and of itself, from beginning to end, is completely 100% consistent. And I really, really appreciate that. Probably my biggest complaint, if I have one, of the sequel trilogy is how all three of the films look very different. The first film looks like J.J. Abrams trying to make it look like the original Star Wars movie. The Force Awakens does. The Last Jedi looks like a Rian Johnson film. And again, they all look great, but they all just don't look the same. Rian Johnson's film, the cinematography is fantastic. The visuals are fantastic. It's a beautifully shot film, but it doesn't look like either of the other two. And then you get to The Rise of Skywalker, and The Rise of Skywalker is, okay, this is almost pure J.J. Abrams mixed in with a little bit of what Rian Johnson did, which looks different from The Last Jedi and looks different from The Force Awakens. One of the things that, in my opinion, benefits that benefits the prequels is that the prequels look completely visually consistent. Even if you don't like the look of it, it looks visually consistent. And I can't help if I'm having a little aversion to Obi-Wan Kenobi in much of the same way that people who were expecting the prequels to look like the original trilogy did with the prequels. Also, we got some cool new ships. I thought the Partisan ship was pretty cool. Some of those transports were a lot of fun. That ship at the end that Obi-Wan Kenobi flew around, I would die to have a toy of. I thought that was a really cool ship. Now, for the things I didn't like about Obi-Wan Kenobi, although it was visually consistent, I thought it was still visually weak. Some of the camera angles were weak. The way that some of the ships were shot in this very bizarre sort of straight forward or straight behind angles. I'll give it its pluses for being consistent, but it kind of gets dragged down just because of the way that perspectives are off. I talked about this in previous episodes when Vader force grabs the shuttle leaving from Jabim. It just the perspective looks completely wrong. The way that the ships, as I mentioned a moment ago, would fly directly at the screen, it's very weird, visually weak. Now, if this was something they were going for, it may just not be for me. Considering how consistent it did all look, it makes me believe that they wanted this to look a particular way. That look did not work with me. It's funny, we were watching Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness earlier this week and discussing with my wife Melinda how these films they are just comic book movies. And that's an obvious thing. But I mean, they're comic books brought to life. This Obi-Wan Kenobi series, to me, is the most comic book-like of all of them. It just, even the way that it's shot, And I'm looking forward to the gallery behind the scenes on the show, because I'd love to hear some of the rationale as to why it looks this way, because it doesn't look as good, in my opinion, as the Book of Boba Fett. And it certainly doesn't look as good as The Mandalorian. And then you watch other shows. You watch like Umbrella Academy on Netflix, or Miss Marvel on Disney Plus, or The Boys on Amazon, and they all look fantastic. And compared to Obi Wan Kenobi, I just don't understand. So almost all of my issues with the show are with the look of the show and some of the action sequence decisions, especially that goofy chase with the bounty hunters and Leia on Alderaan, and the editing choices. I just don't understand why, in my view, they made the show look so cheap. That's what I don't get. But apparently it's beat like all the other Star Wars streaming shows. So what do I know? Lastly, and I think a lot of what I just mentioned could have been remedied with this, the soundtrack was just not good, in my opinion. Just not good at all. I watched a recut of the series finale, set to original John Williams, Duel of the Fates, and other music. Specifically, the fight between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. And that fight came off so much better. So much better using John Williams music than the Natalie Holt score. That did not work for me at all. I read an interesting theory about that too, and I don't know how much of it is true, or if any of it is true. But the theory basically was that they tapped Natalie Holt to score the show. She started to score the show, but maybe it wasn't to what everybody liked, and that's why they brought John Williams in to pen an Obi-Wan Kenobi theme. But even the Obi-Wan Kenobi theme wasn't... It was John Williams, but it wasn't the best John Williams, and it was utilized weird. It had a definite theme to it, a theme you could remember, although I couldn't hum it right now for the life of me. But I don't remember like any point in the show hearing it and going, "Oh, hey, that's Obi-Wan Kenobi's theme." Quite honestly, I don't remember hearing any of the music in the show because I just thought it was so weak. For me personally, as a Star Wars fan, I would give Obi-Wan Kenobi a C+. I'm sure we're going to get more now. I don't personally need any more Obi-Wan Kenobi stories. I will watch more Obi-Wan Kenobi stories, but this show was enough, and I'll be interested to go back and rewatch it again. And like I said, I will give it some points for looking a particular way. If I can get used to it looking the way that it is and it just being kind of its own singular thing, then maybe I'll enjoy it a little bit more and bump up my rating over time. I know that I haven't had the desire to sit down and watch it again yet. I did watch the season finale with the family once I got home because they hadn't seen it yet. And I've watched every episode at least 3 times, except for that last episode. I've only watched twice. So, what did you think? I'd love to hear from you. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. TalkShowNerd@gmail.com. And as always, if you want to leave a comment, if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can go and do that there as well, and I will share that on the show.
Something inside me has always been there.
It has, Ray, but that was not the one that I wanted to play because I want to do listener feedback.
I need someone
That's better.
to show me my place in all this.
All right, just a couple of listener feedbacks this week, and the first one comes from Mike Rotunda, who says, "Good luck on your surgery. Wish you a speedy recovery. Thank you. You have a very good channel here." Thank you, Mike. This is the kind of podcast someone like me dreams of. I used to imagine something like this when I was a kid, a platform to just discuss Star Wars. I'm sure you don't remember. I sure you spoke to many fans about Star Wars, but me and you used to have a very deep, heated exchange of messages about The Last Jedi. No, Mike, I absolutely remember, man. I totally remember those exchanges, and it makes me so happy that you still listen to the show and you still write in, because I feel the same way as what you're about to say here. We both had very different points of view. You didn't agree with me, but you never ignored me. You always answered me. And you didn't ban me or censor me. A lot of people say they believe in free speech or opposing arguments, but then they shut people down when someone doesn't agree with them. You never did that. You welcomed my opinion even though you didn't agree with it at all. I have a lot of respect for you. I just wanted you to know that. Too many times on social media, people only remark negatively. I just wanted to leave a positive remark and let you know that your show and the time you put into it is very appreciated. Thank you. Mike, thank you, man. And yeah, I remember those exchanges. I've had conversations with friends of mine about the exchanges that you and I have had on here. But no, you know what? I welcome all of it. It wouldn't be any fun if we agreed with each other all the time. And as long as we're, being respectful, and even if it gets a little disrespectful at times, I want to hear from everybody. And I was always happy after those exchanges with Mike when I would see him pop up and leave a comment again. So thank you for that, Mike. I appreciate you too, man, and thank you for the kind words. I'm doing well, and I'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a moment. Friend of the show, She VP, talking about Obi Wan Kenobi in one of the previous episodes, said this: "Spot on critique, John. The main reason I watched this show was to see Obi-Wan and Anakin back together. I love these two brothers in arms so much. I even have their sabers hanging together side by side in my living room. For me, that opening shot of Anakin turning around took me completely out. I don't understand why they didn't give as much care for the look of him as they did for Luke. And later, perusing through social media, I was frankly surprised at how few people minded the little de-aging that was done. But in the end, I was so happy I was getting them together that I quickly recovered and appreciated the beauty of the moment. They're both just so good with those sabers. It was a treat to see. My favorite moments in the show so far have been Vader and Anakin. Still keeping you in my prayers, John. I wasn't able to see The Force Awakens when it came out, when I was going through cancer and then surgery at the time, so I totally understand the movie and show indulging pain medication-fueled recovery period, LOL. Looking forward to your return. God bless you, brother. Thank you very much, SheVP. I really do appreciate it. All right, before I get to just some personal items for those that are interested, if you want to support my Nerd World, you can do that by purchasing my science fiction space opera series, Embark. Treat yourself or a friend or family member with science fiction. It's written for adults, but great for kids 11 plus. I've had several people reach out over the course of the past 2 weeks telling me how much either they've enjoyed the books or their children's children have enjoyed the books. You can pick up Embark Book 1 today in an ebook for just 99 cents. They're also available in hardcover, paperback, and audiobook. The only audiobook not available yet is the finale, Book 7, Battle Planet, which I hope to get done in the next few months. For Book 1, the story goes as follows. As Earth faces its end, the fight to rule the stars begins. Taft Guardia picked the right day to upgrade his ship when fellow pilot Kate Amaro arrived needing help investigating a cryptic message left behind by her late aerospace engineer father. Unaware that an industrial accident inside Earth's largest supplier of civilian and military spacecraft has set off an apocalyptic chain of events, they make a shocking discovery. As war erupts during the global evacuation, Earth's evacuees stand upon the brink of annihilation. Realizing the significance of what they've found, with the help of a ragtag squadron of pilots, Taft and Katha might be humanity's greatest hope for survival among the stars. Don't miss this 2021 Tale Flick Discovery Sci-Fi Award-winning series. If you like your science fiction, space opera, epic, military science fiction filled with romance and action, then Embark is perfect for you. So head on over to Amazon.com, or you can go to mynerdworld.net and check it out there as well. And again, this is how you can support My Nerd World and the show in lieu of a Patreon. Go and pick up a book for yourself or a friend. All right, that wraps up the show this week. Before I let you go, a couple of personal items here because I like to share on the show, and I have this show and the full-time show that I do on Twin Cities News Talk. So, as I mentioned earlier, went in for my surgery on Tuesday the 21st, and it was successful. It was a very, very rough recovery, and I'm still recovering now. I'm actually impressed that I made it through the 40 minutes of this podcast. We'll see how I feel the rest of the day. However, while I was in recovery at the University of Minnesota Medical Center on a Saturday, I received a phone call from my wife that I never expected to get, and was a complete and utter shock to me. But the man who I host my weekly radio show with, Andrew Lee, he goes by Drew Lee, and also my best friend of the past 15 years, had suddenly passed away last Saturday. Don't know exactly what happened. Assumed some type of cardiac event at this point in time. All that I know is, based off of the details of what I've been told about his day, was that he had a very good day. And that brings me a certain sense of comfort and peace in the wake of this just devastating loss. I've never had to deal with the loss of any family member, to which Drew certainly felt like one as a brother to me. He hired me in Tucson, Arizona, back in 2008 to be his morning show host there on the FM news talk station, and we worked together as he was my program director and producer for 3 years there, to a ton of success before he left to come up here to Minneapolis to be the program director for the radio station that I now work on. 6 years ago, this coming August, he hired me to come join him. He had transitioned from management to being an on-air talent, and they needed another co-host to go along with his co-hosting, and so we were finally able to get together. Through that period of time, we maintained our friendship throughout that entire period of time. And that's something that doesn't happen a ton in my life. I have very few. I keep like a very close knit of friends. Drew has a lot of friends, and was an absolutely amazing person. One of his the best qualities was the fact that no matter who he met, he just accepted them for who they were, and was loved by everybody that met him. But he quickly, when he hired me in 2008 and 2009, became my best friend, and had maintained that to the point where we ended up doing the show together for almost 6 years here, and didn't feel like I worked, because I went in and did the show with my best friend every day. He always came in with a smile, or singing some goofy song, or we would throw some jab at one another just to get a rise out of each other, and just enjoyed every minute that we spent on the air together. So it came as a shock to me and to everybody. It still is. We're just a little over a week out from this, of his just untimely passing. He would have been turning 50 coming up in August. I turn 50 coming up on Friday. So thank you for those that listen to the show here on My Nerd World and are already aware of this particular piece of news and are hearing me talk about it openly for the first time. I'll get into it a little bit more when I get back on the air on Twin Cities News Talk. I just want to thank you for your prayers through all of this. I do believe in the power of prayer, and it really has helped sustain me this past week. And the fact that I'm able to keep it together on this podcast this week, and so this is the first time I've been able to actually talk about the situation and to hold myself together. And I think that goes along sort of hand in hand with the progress that I've made physically in the course of the past almost 2 weeks with my open heart surgery. To have these two things happen together, it's just it's surreal. But my broken heart is mending, and as is my broken chest as well. And thank you for just letting me take a few moments, if you've stuck around this long, to hear the end of this week's show. I ask that you would pray for Drew's family as they go through this difficult time, and everybody whose lives have been touched by him. He touched thousands upon thousands of people, and he is going to be truly, truly missed. There will not be a day that goes by that I do not think about my friend. So thank you for your continued prayers for me as well. I will take as many as I can get, and I guess with that, thank you for checking the show out this week and sticking around towards the end. I'm looking forward to getting back on the air on Twin Cities News Talk here very soon. And hey, based off the fact that I just did 45 minutes here, we'll see how I end up feeling the rest of the day. But I think that's progress. So, all right, I'm going to wrap things up now. Enjoy your holiday week. I hope wherever you are happy, you are healthy, you are safe. If you're listening in America, celebrate life and everything that makes the United States of America what it is. Just an amazing place to live that I feel so honored and blessed to be born and to live in. So celebrate this 4th of July, and hug your friends and loved ones, your friends, family, and loved ones tightly. And hopefully we'll be back again next week with a brand new episode. Thank you so much for listening. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.